Welcome to 3 Sips of Advice. The first question is, what are 3 industries that East Carolina Angels are most likely to invest in? East Carolina Angels is a very broad-based angel investor network. Some angel investor networks are very focused on a specific industry or sector, type of business, phase of business, seed, early stage, pre-seed, growth capital, those kinds of things. Because of the fact that East Carolina Angels is North Carolina's newest angel investor network, we're very broad-based at this stage. The one thing I can say is we're very return on investment focused. And so that's our primary attribute. We will look at many different industries. I can tell you a little bit about, since our inception last September in 2019, we've looked at about 50 companies. And of those 50 companies, I would say roughly 50% or half come from life sciences. And then the rest are an assortment of physical science, consumer products, and so forth. It's interesting because I think it's fair to say that most angel investor networks, as well as pooled funds, tend not to look at things like therapeutics or medical devices because they take so much investment. The length of time to get to market is very long. And typically it's a very lengthy and arduous regulatory and compliance-based process. In our case, though, our angels include a lot of life science professionals. And so there has been a lot of interest in medical device companies, number one. That includes things like digital health. Number two, we do and have looked at many therapeutic companies. And then I would say the third area that we've looked at out of the last 50 companies includes software, SaaS models, and artificial intelligence. That's not to say that we won't look at or have not looked at consumer products, hardware companies, agricultural technology companies. We will even look at real estate projects. We haven't looked at one yet, but that's something that East Carolina Angels could do. We have an affiliation with East Carolina University, and so we work very closely with the Miller School of Entrepreneurship and its students. It's a great program to help drive entrepreneurs and educate them and train them and give them hands-on experiential learning. And that company, that center has been working with a lot of companies to put interns in order to help drive those businesses, but also to help educate the students. And so we work very closely with that university. We've looked at technology transfer companies that have come out of the university. All right, question number 2. What are 3 things that North Carolina startups could do to raise out-of-state investment funding, like Colorado? The reason Colorado is mentioned as an example is because I was previously in Colorado. I spent about 12 years there at Colorado State University. I also managed a venture capital fund that was associated with the university called CSU Fund 1. I would say there are many things. For one thing, companies and startups should not just look at opportunities, funding opportunities, investment opportunities that are local. It certainly helps, but again, the question lends itself to be thinking on a much more national or even global basis, which companies need to be thinking about at the very early phases of the company's development and growth. And there are many things that our companies, our startups here in North Carolina could do to raise out-of-state investment funding. One would be to enter not only local or regional business pitch competitions, but the more national business pitch competitions. And there are many of those that exist. Some of them offer prize money in excess of $50,000, even $100,000, but it also gets you access to a wide assortment of mentors, investors. It gets you in front of investment groups that are located in these states like Colorado. And almost all the VCs that I know, and the angels out in Colorado is a good example, attend many of these. At least they used to before the pandemic. Now they participate remotely. But there is a very definite interest in having a broad look at innovation across all states. There has to be a tie. I mean, one of the things that's important to know is that investors always like to have a local lead in order to manage the investment. That's one of the reasons why most VCs and angel groups here in the United States won't make investments internationally, because they don't have any boots on the ground. People that are able to watch over the companies, mentor them, just keep an eye on, make sure expenses are going the way they're supposed to, forecasts are correct. It's a really hands-on, hand-holding process that's involved on the investor side. And so again, regionally based investors make the most sense, but syndicates and syndicated investments are extremely important because, again, most companies, it depends on what sector and what type of business you have, are going to have to raise not just one round of financing, but they're going to have to raise multiple rounds of financing. That traditionally is going to require multiple investors, not just the regional ones, but ones that are located out of state. So the first idea would be to enter national biz pitch competitions. The second one is mentioned a lot, but a lot of startups that I've talked to don't leverage this capacity as much. And that's leveraging partnerships with large professional service providers. This includes accounting firms, law firms, consulting groups, and so forth. Not just the local ones. I'm really talking about the ones with a national footprint. And the reason is because your local representative here is bound to make a connection for you in a place like Colorado or other states. And then getting connected with those individuals, they have the connections and the networks in order to help drive connectivity to the pools of funding that are available in other states like Colorado. The third suggestion that I would have, and this is one, again, that I think a lot of companies don't think too much about. And I mentioned it earlier in terms of our work with East Carolina University. But teaming up with research universities carries a lot of positive attributes. For one, they're very innovative. The faculty are usually doing cutting edge research. They have access to pools of capital that you don't. These are non-dilutive sources, such as government funding from all the agencies, NIH, NSF, DOD, and so forth. And so teaming with universities and teaming specifically with faculty members from the universities can really give you a leg up in terms of access to those types of funding sources. Because frankly, these government agencies tend to look for the partnerships that they've already established with major institutions in a wide variety of states. And so being able to team with them gives you the innovative piece to be able to do R&D, to be able to do the D part of R&D, help you drive toward product development. And universities are very savvy in today's world. And they have the ability to help you to drive your business where it needs to go. The other thing that I would suggest in working with universities is they also have access to a wide variety of investors that are located locally around those universities. So typically the technology transfer offices or commercialization offices have access to venture capital firms, to angel investors, angel investment groups, but also the alumni of the university. I'll give you an example. I mentioned earlier that I ran a venture fund for Colorado State University. And that fund, although we certainly looked primarily at companies that were affiliated with or came out of Colorado State University, we also broadened the definition of affiliated with to include any company that had a research partnership with the university. So CSU Fund 1 not only invested in Colorado companies, but also had the capability for a company located anywhere that had a partnership, a research partnership with the university in order to invest in that company. And so again, having those kinds of partnerships with major research universities can give you a leg up into the investment world locally there, but also to non-dilutive sources of capital. Could be through the state, could be through economic development groups, it could be through the federal agencies that I talked about as well. The third question and last question today, what are the 3 non-obvious advantages of being a startup in an accelerator? The first one I would say is don't discount the value of the training. I've met so many founders of startup companies that really have a feeling that they know it all, that they know precisely because they're passionate about an idea, an innovation, or a product, that people will just simply flock to the company in order to buy the new product or service. And that's not necessarily true. In fact, many times it's quite the opposite. Until you perform customer discovery and find out exactly what your customers want, you could be headed down a path that will find no customers. And so really you have to do that work early on. Accelerators give you the training and the background, the fundamentals, the strong business fundamentals that are needed in order to drive any startup business from its early stage idea to product development or service development out into the marketplace. And so that's just a critical component. I would say unless you're a serial entrepreneur where you've done this, you've been there, and not just created companies, but you've also failed in some companies, which is a very valuable experience. I would say everyone needs that kind of training. And so don't automatically assume that it's not going to be valuable. Pay attention, grab as much of the training and educational components that belong to an accelerator. They will pay dividends in the long run. The second item that I would suggest is that accelerators allow you to essentially run your business anywhere in the world. And so they have a global component to them. And what I mean by that is if you look at the sister analogy of incubators, incubators are there to provide real estate, collision space, innovation space, to be able to network and work together in a very localized facility. And that's good. And it provides the capability to bring people together that are like-minded, driving toward a common set of goals to help them to succeed. Accelerators really have connectivity on a national and global basis. And so no matter where you're located or no matter where you plan to start your business, create and grow and mature your business, an accelerator anywhere will be able to give you the fundamentals and the foundation to be able to drive that business out into the world and help you to be successful. And so that's a clear distinction between the two, and one that tends to be overlooked at times because a lot of people think that really it's the real estate component or the real estate play that goes along with incubators that helps startup companies in the early days. And don't get me wrong, they're important. Having subsidized rent, having access to a printer, to Wi-Fi, and to other CEOs like you, those are all important aspects, but the accelerator gives you so much more. And so those are the components that you need to be looking for. The third is that accelerators are extremely well connected to investors, and not just the local investors. They have come from all over the place. They bring in trainers and educators on a national basis and sometimes even on a global basis. And so they have access to these large networks of venture capital firms, angel investment groups, and so forth. And so, in addition to offering traditional seed investments, which come with accelerator through the competition and the graduation process, traditionally you'll receive some money at the end. It's more about the continuation of the funding down the road that you're going to be looking for. And so having someone like an accelerator de-risk your operation will help to bring other large investors to the table to lock down follow-on funding and successive rounds of capital. So important in today's world, because no matter how much money you think you need today, it's probably going to be a factor of 5 or 10 more than what you think you need. And so always have that connectivity, always have that network, and be thinking not just about your needs today, but your needs in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road. I want to thank you for listening today. Take care and go forth and prosper with your business endeavors. And I want to thank my good friend, Jim Roberts, who's really an expert at all things entrepreneurship. And so I would suggest you reaching out to Jim anytime you have any questions. Thank you for your time.